All right, strap the fuck in, ladies and gentlemen. We're going straight into it. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys with your host, friendly neighborhood far-right thug, and enemy of the state, Mr. George Cresswell. Hope we're all doing well. Hope we're all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever we are. Enemy of the state today, because I don't think weirdos in government and weirdos in the school system should be teaching sex to 3-year-olds. Yes, that's what we're going to be talking about today, ladies and gentlemen. Not just 3-year-olds, but all the way through the radically left-wing Alfred Kinsey, John Money, queer trans theory-infused public school system that, whether you realize it or not, you are at war with, or at least they are at war with you, unless obviously you're on their side. But do hear me out, ladies and gentlemen. I got a feeling there's going to be some things which you really want to know about that the government are going to be implementing to sexually indoctrinate your 3-year-olds and to sexually indoctrinate your 7-year-olds and to sexually indoctrinate your 11-year-olds through this plan, through this scheme, through this edumacation, known as, I'm just going to get the abbreviation for it, is RSE, the Relationships and Sexuality Code. It's being imposed on Wales by the Senate, by the government, that mandates sexual education for as young as 3 years old. In some aspects, as we'll get into in a moment. But the fact that they're trying to even bring certain concepts onto 3-year-olds should really, really worry you. Especially when you see where some of these ideas are being backed from, namely radically left-wing, quote-unquote, charities, the ones that are, pro-pride, pro-LGBT, the unbreakable Wi-Fi code mafia mob, right? The target is your children. They want to sexually indoctrinate your children. They do so off the back of the work of people like Alfred Kinsey, John Money. It's people who are, quote-unquote, academics, but their entire academic field, believe it or not, was basically sexually abusing children. They were two pedophile sexologists, which if you've watched the film What is a Woman, you know about these two gentlemen. You know about a book, for example, that Alfred Kinsey, which, if you look at this guy, I'm going to pull him up on screen for you now, ladies and gentlemen. If you just look at this guy, don't you think that this guy is just absolutely great to be teaching, how many, for example, orgasms, or investigating how many orgasms a 6-month-old male baby can have? Yeah, that's real, ladies and gentlemen. I wish I was lying to you. But in, for example, Mr. Kinsey's book, which I believe he wrote in 1948, and it is called Sexual Behavior in the Human Male, there's a table in that book in which he documents the number of orgasms children can have going all the way down to 6 months. This is the man that all of the gender queer theory stuff is based on. This is the origins of the movements based on the research that spawned it. It was evil, completely evil, from the very start. Yet we've just taken all of this up in modern day and think that it's fucking normal, all of the stuff that spawned from it. Now, if you speak out against it, you could lose your job, you could be character assassinated, you could potentially even go to prison. Especially if you're a parent that maybe doesn't want your child being sexually indoctrinated via the school system. So make no mistake, that is happening, and that is the goal. Politicians want this, okay? That you could potentially face punishment. You could potentially face, very bad outcomes because they're mandating this. And they welcome it. Just look at this video. I've covered this MS before, but I can't remember what her name is. I ask you, do you want, this person, just when she speaks about this now, do you want this person, really in some ways, anywhere near your children, but certainly being the one championing the restriction of parental rights when it comes to things like child sexual education as young as 3 years old?
and I'm going to welcome the fact that the Minister has removed the right of withdrawal and is sticking with RSC and health relationships, and that the Welsh Government is going to make that mandatory. And I'm really, really pleased that that is happening. And that is exactly what will happen in schools with allowing RSE education and not allowing the parents to withdraw.
They're giving this the thumbs up.
Through fear or misunderstanding, which it very often is. And
fear indeed. Fear indeed. And it's not misunderstanding a lot of the time. It's because parents know exactly what the children are being taught and they're not happy about it with very good reason. Very good reason. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, one thing to get off the table, though, is this is different from the old system. This is different from the old system. There was an amendment passed, however, to do with the rights of parents to withdraw pupils or children from RSE. I made no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, I know that they are pushing this hard, pretty much in all areas of education, that if you don't want to go along with this, if you want to personally object to being taught these kinds of things because either you don't think it's appropriate or you want no part of it, the school system will come down hard. School system will come down hard on you. Make no mistake about it. But it says here, if a parent of a pupil at the school requests that the pupil is wholly or partly excused from receiving teaching and learning encompassing the mandatory element of the relationships and sexuality education at school, pupil must be excused until the request is withdrawn. So I'm not sure if this post that I'm getting this from isn't written out very well for me to be able to see if this is from the current bill or if this is from the old system. I'd assume, given that they've literally just said this new system is being made completely mandatory, that these actually would not apply. If the parent of a child for whom funded non-maintained nursery education is provided requests that the child is wholly or partly excused from receiving teaching and learning encompassing the mandatory element of the relationships and sexuality education at the provider or funder of funded non-maintained nursery education, the child must be excused until the request is withdrawn. But this comes in 3 phases, ladies and gentlemen. Let me break it down for you now. It's from 3 phases. Now, phase 1 is from age 3. From age 3. Which is pretty much the onset of mandatory education in Wales and in the UK. That's nursery age, okay? Phase 2 starts from age 7, and phase 3 starts from age 11. These are the 3 phases. Now, in phase 1, what kind of learning do you get? So your 3-year-old sounds, sounds all completely innocent to start off with. The use of accurate terminology for all body parts. The use of accurate terminology for all body parts. And then you have an awareness of the human life cycle and that reproduction is a part of life. Now, taking this all together, ladies and gentlemen, already I think most of you would think that this is wholly inappropriate for a 3-year-old. This is wholly inappropriate for a 3-year-old. Even going back and learning the accurate terminology for all body parts, now that I think about it. When we were in school, I think this has only gotten worse since I was in school. You didn't even see any of the stuff in a textbook till you got to comprehensive school. So until you'd already hit phase 3, you didn't see any of this stuff. Now they're trying to bring in knowledge of sexual reproduction taught to you by whoever it is in the school system that probably has pronouns in their bio and weird purple, greenish, yellow hair, whatever the hell it is, right? Is teaching your child at 3 years old about the human life cycle? And you don't have and some of you are listening to this and you'll think, what's wrong with that? I would think, what's wrong with you? Do you not, as a parent, want control over when your kids learn this stuff? And then the government is mandating it. From 3 years old. This is not the only Kinsey could have dreamed of. You know what I mean? And this is all to do with expanding the diversity and equity of the education system, as we'll get onto in a minute when we see who's backing these initiatives. From age 7, children are taught about fertility and menstruation. They're also taught about attraction, sexuality, reproductive organs, and pregnancy. Important to remember this is all compulsory. ladies and gentlemen. So, for example, phase 2, an awareness of how positive and negative social and cultural norms regarding sex, gender, and sexuality influence relationships and behaviors. So then already at age 7, the struggle session is starting. Already at age 7, the struggle session is starting to then trying to put good and bad into the mix. On a 7-year-old, that what is their chief concern really going to be? Probably hopscotch and football training. Why do they need to be taught? You know, maybe you can have things like precocious puberty, whereby, okay, then you may need to teach, for example, some of them girls about menstruation, but that's on the parents. That's for the parents to do so in their specific instance, you know? And that's why it's important for the parents, at least in my opinion, to have control over this, because then you decide when your child is ready to learn this. Nobody knows your child better than you do. And even with parents who you could argue, you know, might not have the best grip on these things, if we want to maintain some kind of parental rights, we have to at least give people the benefit of the doubt in most instances, right? Unless it's an instance where you have good indication that the child is at risk of harm or abuse or anything like that. Okay? But you should not have weird strangers talking to your 7-year-old about positive and negative social and cultural norms regarding sex, gender, and sexuality, especially when they likely don't have the best moral compass and the best moral foundation to do this in the first place. As we see with many of school teachers nowadays who are radically left-wing, you know, ideologues. You also then, for example, I believe this is at phase 2, age 7 also, knowledge and understanding of how reproductive organs develop in a human body. This includes understanding fertility and the processes of reproduction, including what supports menstrual health and well-being, recognizing the process of pregnancy and birth. Again, this is all for the parents to do so, because you might, for example, have a young child already in your family, and then you end up getting pregnant with another child, and then obviously as you get bigger, the child may only be about 4 or 5 years old, and you're going to ask what's going on. But again, you give them to that in the way that you feel is appropriate. You're not going to be telling them all the things about the reproductive organs and stuff like that. No, it's just, oh, your little sister's on the way, that kind of stuff, right? Or your little brother's on the way, your little brother's growing right now, that kind of stuff, right? You don't go into all this thing about, oh, well, you know, mommy and daddy love each other very much, and they use these organs to do this, because, you know, mommy was in her fertile period, and all of this stuff, right? This is very, very worrying stuff. You wouldn't explain it that way to your 7-year-old. You know what I mean? You can be sure with the people backing this coming through the public school system, this will be brought through in the most disgusting ways possible. You can damn right guarantee that. And obviously, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, diversity, equity, I'm not going to use the term equality because it's a misnomer, and inclusion runs through the code. Curriculum content must be inclusive and reflect diversity. Diversity of what? Diversity of what? Diversity with regards to, they try to rebrand them nowadays as minor attracted persons. Is that the kind of stuff that we're talking here? It must include learning that reflects a diversity of relationships, gender, and sexuality, including LGBTQ plus lives. As again, they're trying to indoctrinate your children into this standardizing, you know, basically the killing off of our civilization, because you've got to take into account every relationship that is not a, you know, standard heterosexual relationship outside of grave evils like IVF is basically a reproductive dead end. So, they're trying to make, you know, further the depopulation narrative that all this stuff is normal, when it isn't. Welsh Government is committed to covering the following themes in RSE: relationships, rights and equity, sex, gender and sexuality, bodies and body image, sexual health and well-being, and violence, safety and support, to assist schools in their planning of RSE. These themes are interwoven into the learning strands. Across the learning strands, curriculum content in RSE must be inclusive and reflect diversity. It must include learning that develops learners' awareness and understanding of different identities, views and values, and a diversity of relationships, gender, sexuality, including LGBTQ plus lives. Learning about rights and equity, there we go, finally they're using the right term here, runs through all the strands, as well as embedding learning and experience through a rights-based approach to learning. Rights without responsibility. However, is what is a key theme of what's running through Wales at the moment. We're constantly banging on about rights. This is a restriction of rights. You can't prescribe Palestine action, for example, because there's a restriction on their rights. Everything rights, but no responsibility whatsoever. Many third sector organisations were consulted on the code, including Stonewall. Now, you know that charity's name from my conversation with James S's, for example, which if you haven't gone and listen to that, make sure you do. We talk about a lot of the charities that are directly trying to drive a wedge in between children and their parents, for example. We're doing very, very underhanded grooming things. A lot of this is grooming tactics, ladies and gentlemen. You have one charity, quote unquote, for example, always taxpayer funded, mind you. You have one charity, quote unquote, that was sending breast binders to young girls behind parents' backs. That charity was Mermaids. Stonewall, very vocal on rejecting the UK Supreme Court's verdict on biological sex, for example. Very, very radical. And you also have elements of the NSPCC and stuff like that, which influence this as well, which have also been captured by these far left radical ideologues that are now having substantial influence on your children's education. And you wonder why your child's coming out of primary school, saying that they're born in the wrong body, or, oh, I think I'm attracted to girls, when they shouldn't even, if they're a girl, for example, or boys saying I think they're attracted to boys, they shouldn't even be worried about that at fucking 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. They shouldn't even be worried about that. But this is where we have, with the increased secularization of society, we have no moral foundation to oppose any of this stuff anymore. We have no moral foundation to say that any of this stuff is even wrong. You have no moral foundation to say that anything is wrong. So why would you even have laws in the first place? But again, ladies and gentlemen, the big thing I want to bring you to is who is behind this. It's not just, the government. Well, it is the government at the heart of it. But outside of the government, sort of like a big octopus with the tentacles going out, you have all these quote-unquote charities, like I mentioned. And Ms. Lynn Neagle here, is only too keen, thank God they're being very open about this, to thank and bring to light the contributions of people like Stonewall Cymru and all of these other pro-LGBT, radical, gender and trans Marxist, usually, charities and organizations coming forward. And she's the education minister. The education minister is praising these radical charities that, again, are now, via the government, having drastic impact on your children's innocence, for lack of a better word, and growing up, in a safe and prosperous Wales. A lot of these initiatives are tied in with like Nation Sanctuary and where is it? I've got something to talk about a little bit later in this episode. It's a charity known as Asylum Justice, which needs to be shut down. As soon as possible, and has no business being, having any influence in Wales. I've got a very itchy nose at the minute, ladies and gentlemen. Please bear with me. I'm sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure what's going on. I have a very, very itchy nose. But anyway, the Senate's RSE code, as we just talked about, made sex education mandatory for 3-year-olds. Stonewall were among the groups consulted. Senate member Lynn Neagle praised their contribution. She's now education minister. Let's throw you over to Ms. Neagle now, ladies and gentlemen. This is what she had to say.
I'd like to recognise all those organisations and individuals who made such a strong case for RSE to the committee. NSPCC Cymru Wales, Welsh Women's Aid, Stonewall Cymru, Brooke Cymru, Professor E.J. Reynolds and the Children's Commissioner for Wales. Many of these organisations have written individually to MSs in recent days, making a case for high-quality RSE from a position of far more expertise than I could ever claim to have. I'd like to...
You could never, ever get anything high quality. We talk about high quality. The quality of everything has just been going down the pan in pretty much everything in recent years. Everything that isn't far left radical money laundering schemes, basically. So she mentioned here some of the organizations she mentioned, ladies and gentlemen. As I said, you cannot trust any of these charities nowadays. NSPCC, the NSPCC Cymru Wales, can't trust them. Welsh Women's Aid. And say, after all this, ladies and gentlemen, the age of the Welsh, the age of the female liberal politician is over. The age of the female liberal politician is over. Welsh Women's Aid, Stonewall Cymru, Brooke Cymru, Professor E.J. Reynolds, which if I'm not mistaken is one of the professors, I believe, at Cardiff University, who will be coming up in a conversation I've got coming up with somebody that's a lot more versed in this than I am, particularly in Wales. And also you have Children's Commissioner for Wales. So all of the people that the government are supposedly meant to be there for your children to secure their well-being are actively doing the opposite, trying to indoctrinate them into thinking that this is in any way normal and good when it's not. It's actively contributing in pretty much every way to the destruction of Wales as a country and as a people. Because all of these things are tied in together. Asylum justice and anti-racism and all of this stuff, decolonisation, they're all tied in together. So you want to see as well, which we'll get onto in a moment, that wouldn't be surprised if I start getting some things about misinformation and stuff like that for just showing you the truth on these things, right? We want to see how much the Welsh government spends on quote-unquote policing misinformation, but all of these radical charities via being funded by the government, it is very much like a mafia crime family. Make no mistake about it. We were seeing this, Michael Franzese actually wrote a book about it. I haven't had the pleasure of reading it yet, but actually wrote a book about it called Mafia Democracy, because he noticed there was the same things occurring in the American government, which were basically the same way that you'd run the American mafia crime families back in the day. And I'm seeing the same thing with Wales at the moment. You have the Welsh government, which is like the figurehead, the boss at the top, decides how everything goes. And then you have all of these things which they influence and pull the strings on. Politicians and everybody else they pull the strings on, but these charities in particular, which are like the rackets the mob used to run. So you have like the Welsh Race Council, you have Sustrans, you have all of these things, so many more, Stonewall that I mentioned, that are then having massive influences on public perception and public policy, and all to do so with turning us more into this like socialist nanny state where you don't have any freedom, you'll own nothing and be happy, you live in your 15-minute city with a bunch of child rapists because it'll all be normalized and stuff like that. If you then speak out against it because you happen to be in any way conservative, nationalist, whatever, you're thrown in a gulag for the rest of your life. And your children will just be raised by the state. They force you into society now and thinking that it's a good thing because they instead of realizing that a male and female in a family, in a marriage, for example, are working together. They may be doing two separate roles, but they're working together. No, this big psyop happened with regards to feminism, and now you have the mother and the father feeling they have to be at war with each other. So they're both in work, they're both doing whatever. The family's fallen apart. There is no family anymore, which is the bedrock of society. And then you have children being raised by the state, and you wonder why they all grow up with fucking nose rings and devil horns and all stuff like that, right? And they all grow up with bright coloured hair and all of this stuff with the increased liberalization. And you think, maybe all those people banging on about slippery slopes had a bit of a point, Anyway. Think they're not pushing the LGBTQ plus material in primary schools. Again, being informed by these radical left-wing charities like Stonewall, they are. Hannah Blythen, for example, recently confirmed that the Welsh government helped Stonewall translate 2 books on LGBTQ plus families into Welsh, and they were then distributed to Welsh primary schools. Primary schools, ladies and gentlemen, they were distributed to Welsh primary schools.
Recently, our support has enabled Stonewall Cymru and Penarth to translate into Welsh 2 books on LGBTQ plus families. The books distributed to primary schools will ensure classrooms have access to inclusive literature reflecting the diversity of Wales. Recently,
reflecting the destruction of Wales, reflecting a lot of things that are symbolising the destruction of Wales. Population in collapse and stark decline. And then, obviously that means we have to import more people of completely alien cultures that have no business being here, when we could perfectly well do things on our own if not only the government was to stop being so overbearing and nanny state, but if we were to change a lot of our societal attitudes on things as well. But as I said, if you think they're not pushing it, if you think they're not trying to push the most radical gender Marxist education indoctrination onto your kids, they are, and they're being open about it. At the very least, we can thank them for being very open about it. You literally just have to be able to open your eyes and see it and believe them when they say it. And get over the fact that you are going to be struggle session to death. You are going to be struggle session to death over this stuff, but you have to stay true to principles. And Well, really, to do that, you have to acknowledge objective morality, and to acknowledge objective morality, there's a lot of other things that have to come along with that really force you to dig deep into what your belief system really is and the fruits of it. But again, you really do want to be taking a very vested interest in what your children are being taught. And there will be some times when you realize what's going on, it will bring you into conflict with the education system, and you have to be prepared to go toe-to-toe with them. You have to be prepared to go toe-to-toe with them. The devil, in control of the government right now, does not want to give up the grip that he already has on your children. Make no mistake about it. Remember what we talked about with James Harvey, for example, where, a dictator will always target the next generation coming. You need about 15 years to fully install a dictatorship because that's how long it takes to fully indoctrinate children into being revolutionaries. It constantly feels there's some kind of revolution that needs to take place. But eventually you'll end up with a system like is outlined in 1984. Eventually end up with a system which is outlined as something similar as it is in 1984. We are perilously close. We are perilously close. Because you'll already have children in this day and age going to their teachers, for example, and saying, my dad they won't express it in this terms, but, my daddy said this, and it'll be something vaguely conservative, maybe, something maybe a bit anti-immigrant in response to news headline about more immigrant crime, for example. And, might need to put in a call about him and, have the police investigate, or might need to call social services and have the child ripped away and all stuff like this under some forced adoption scheme. We've got some conversations about that coming up in the future as well, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very, very troubling stuff. But I don't think people realize how tyrannical the Welsh regime is. And it's been spearheaded by Welsh liberal women like Eluned Morgan and Hannah Blythen and all these other people here. That's what I mean. Eventually, after this, the age of the female liberal politician is over. Feminism very soon is going to be breathing its dying breaths. Maybe not very soon. Got a good few bits of tyranny first. But a lot of this, you got to think a lot of it's coming to light now, and it's being so flamboyant, accelerated so far in the last 5 years, so fast in the last 5 years, because the time of the evil forces governing this world is coming to an end. It is coming to an end, and there will be a reckoning. And definitely the female liberal politicians will get caught up in that reckoning. I swear to God, ladies and gentlemen, I have just got a very itchy nose. I don't know what it is. I'm not a drug addict, I promise. I'm not doing the white marching powder or anything like that. But I mentioned all of these charities are woven together with the Welsh government, ladies and gentlemen. It's like a big octopus with the Welsh government at its centre. You have, for example, charities that help asylum seekers, quote-unquote asylum seekers. And like I said, I believe I put out a post today. What was the post I put out today? Give me 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. I'll find it now. I put out a post earlier on today, which was to do with this whole refugee stuff, right? And I said it was that if they, here we go. So it was a picture of Lisa Nandy holding a Refugees Welcome Wigan sign. And it's across from a headline from Wigan Today. MP calls for Wigan Hotel to stop housing asylum seekers after incident involving schoolgirls. Security has been stepped up and the council is in talks with the firm managing asylum seekers, quote-unquote asylum seekers, at a Wigan hotel amid claims of schoolgirls being watched and harassed. And this is not unique. This was all the way back in 2021. I said, they use the term refugee because imported votes would give the game away. And that's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. This charity here is trying to stop any removal of these asylum seekers because they want to give them the right to vote so that the Welsh vote means nothing. Because if the Welsh vote means nothing, they cannot get themselves out of this tyrannical regime by any democratic means. And democracy will be the same kind of democracy that you have in North Korea. The People's Republic of North Korea, which is one of the most tyrannical regimes we have on the planet. So you have charities, quote unquote, like Asylum Justice, that works to help asylum seekers avoid deportation and access to NHS and housing. So, what is Asylum Justice? Asylum Justice, fighting for the rights of refugees and vulnerable migrants in Wales. And that is directly against the interests of the Welsh people, the Welsh worker, the Welsh taxpayer. It is directly against their interests. Because everything, they bring in more and more people in, it drives wages down, it drives housing down, it drives birth rates down, it drives prosperity down, and then obviously it functions as a reason to import more people, because all of these problems mean that you need to import more people to make up the deficit of people that are not reproducing due to societal norms, such as normalizing the LGBTQIA plus stuff, right? This unbreakable Wi-Fi code mafia stuff, and normalizing all of that. Getting kids hooked on porn, for example, so they're just in the rooms jacking off all day and they don't have any idea how to approach relationships and stuff like that. Don't have any idea what a good moral foundation is for a relationship, why marriage is important and all of this stuff. And as a result, the birth rate keeps going down and down and down. You need to import more people. And eventually those people are going to get the right to vote, whether they should have it or not. And then your vote means nothing. Your vote means nothing because you can be voted out by other sectarian blocs. Sooner or later then, you end up going extinct as a people. That's the logical end point of this. That Wales will cease to be Wales because there'll be no Welsh people in it. And eventually the government will get taken over as well, because it's like they're trying to feed this monster. It's like they're trying to feed this monster that eventually is just going to get so big that it's going to eat them as well. So, for example, a £40,000 grant was awarded to Asylum Justice and came to light following a Freedom of Information request submitted. It describes itself as the only legal charity in Wales providing free, in case probably means taxpayer funded, independent legal advice to asylum seekers, refugees and vulnerable migrants. So in this instance, you have people that shouldn't be here, likely running these charities for a start, giving taxpayer money to people that also shouldn't be here to fight their cases, legal advice and all stuff like that, when what do the Welsh people get? What do the British people get? You have many instances in Britain, for example, where foreigners involved in rape gangs and stuff like that are able to access legal aid, but people who are being imprisoned for thought crimes, wrong speaking, all of this stuff, right, for things that they put on social media, they are not able to access the same legal aid despite being born in this country, despite being of this country, despite being of our people. Of our people. Or of the people of these isles, because, technically there's differences between all of them. They're all their own ethnic groups. But they are not even allowed access to the same legal aid that they're paying into. But these other foreigners are. These foreigners who shouldn't be here are. Yeah, make it make sense. Asylum Justice is the only charity in Wales and one of just two in the UK providing free independent legal advice and representation to asylum seekers, refugees and vulnerable migrants. So what do they offer, for example? We provide advice and representation across key areas of asylum and immigration law, including initial asylum claims, helping people represent their case for protection. I don't know, maybe it's just the case they can't eat McDonald's chicken nuggets in their home country and that's why they've got to be able to stay here. Yeah, it's a real thing, ladies and gentlemen. Appeals, lodging appeals and representing clients in hearings where claims are refused, and then fresh claims supporting new people to submit new claims where previous applications have failed. Submit new evidence where previous applications have failed. Asylum Justice states it's proud to be part of the Sanctuary Coalition Cymru and the Wales Nation of Sanctuary Working Group. The taxpayer-funded Welsh Refugee Council is a partner of this organisation. Shouldn't surprise you. We're proud to be part of the Sanctuary Coalition Cymru and the Wales Nation of Sanctuary Working Group. Together, we're working for a Wales where people seeking safety are not only welcome but empowered to rebuild their lives with dignity and opportunity. Not necessarily a problem with that. But they can do that in their own land. A lot of these people, they just come in because their lands are shitty compared to ours. Which is rapidly changing. Funnily enough, we're getting more and more of these people in, and our lands are rapidly now resembling theirs. And I have nothing against them wanting to be empowered and rebuild their lives with dignity and opportunity. Just have every problem with them doing it here. Every problem with them doing it here because it's coming at the expense of people whose roots go back thousands of years in this land. Who frankly have more claim to it. And then they're bringing in their own customs, they're bringing in their own language. Eventually you get, you can go anywhere in this country now pretty much, and you'll hear conclaves of people talking in a foreign language. They have no need to assimilate. They have no need to assimilate anymore in large part. And assimilation was always a myth anyway. We believe in a society grounded in compassion, solidarity and justice, where barriers to inclusion are dismantled and the voices of refugees and migrants help shape the decisions that affect them. Well, they can help shape the decisions that affect them in the lands where they came from. First off, going back to France, maybe they can do it there. They can go back to Francistan. That's where they can go back to. Charity's website includes testimonials from those it has helped. For example, Abdullah, who was able to bring his wife to Wales after Asylum Justice helped him with translations. He says he is very happy that Asylum Justice exists. I am certainly sure that he is. I am certainly sure that he is very, very happy that Asylum Justice exists. I'm very happy that Asylum just exists. The work the lawyers do is very serious, helping people hugely. It's a good choice to fund this organisation as it's changing people's lives. Yeah, it's drastically changing the people of Wales' lives for the worse. But of course, Abdullah, privileged citizen, I'm speaking here as the evil, racist, colonising Welshman. That's who I'm speaking as. So I'm obviously evil on all counts and guilty on all counts and should be hanged as an enemy of the state. That's ultimately what should happen, just for being like, no, I want my people to be able to prosper in my homeland first, and where we can help, we should. But at the moment, we should be taking care of our own because we have a lot of problems. We have a lot of problems that's being actively contributed to by immigration. I don't care if that makes me racist or whatever. I don't care. It's true. As we know, illegal migrants and asylum seekers cost taxpayers billions of pounds a year. Their hotels, healthcare and benefits are paid for by us. Yep. Paid for by the Welsh taxpayer or by the British taxpayer, if you're talking about Britain as a whole. With £40,000 from the Welsh government, and you think, it's government funded. Yeah, the government is so amazing. Who funds the government? People often forget this. Who funds the government? You do. You do. You fund their exorbitant 70,000 minimum K salaries a year. And what do you get from it? You get fuck all. You get absolutely fuck all for it. Your roads are shit. Your NHS is shit. Everything is shit. Everything's stupidly expensive. Your energy's stupidly expensive. I think my dog just farted. She's there on the sofa. I think she just farted because I heard something. So again, everything being made worse for the people that are paying for this, and it's being done solely for the benefit people that are coming here from outside. And I don't know about you, but I've had enough. And I would be as well, because it's your money that's being flushed down the pan by people that no longer feel accountable to you and to represent you, and to use your money for what you wanted it for and to benefit you and your future generations. It's being done to ethnically replace you. I don't understand. I'll never understand how people are not more angry about this. And no surprise, ladies and gentlemen, you have foreigners actively campaigning for things like this, and obviously then moves to stop illegal migration. We can't do that because it undermines a nation of sanctuary. So you have Vaughan Gething, for example, the ex-First Minister, ex-scandal-ridden First Minister, slam plans to send illegal migrants to Rwanda, claiming it would undermine the Welsh Government's £55 million nation of sanctuary policy. Literally a foreigner saying that we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't get rid of foreigners because it wouldn't be to the benefit of foreigners. And you tell me that the government is not acting on foreign interests, ladies and gentlemen? Here you go. They say it themselves loud and clear.
The Act undermines our nation of sanctuary policy. Although migration policy is not devolved, the Safety of Rwanda Act will have a detrimental impact on people seeking sanctuary here.
I'll let it play one more time.
The Act undermines our nation of sanctuary policy. Although migration policy is not devolved, the Safety of Rwanda Act will have a detrimental impact on people seeking sanctuary here in Wales. The Act
Again, no concern for the people it does affect, people of Wales that it affects, who are being forced to foot the bill for this. The people who are being paid exorbitant wages to speak in this room, like the pink-haired feminist or purple-haired feminist behind him, people who are getting paid $70,000 a year minimum to do 2 or 3 days a week work. It's not, them that are going to be footing the bill for it. No, it's going to be the taxpayer, mostly at the top, businesses and stuff like that are earning quite a lot. It's going to be them first, but it's also going to be you with every bit of tax that you pay, because you fund the government. You fund the government, remember. So again, this is your money that's being used, again, in an initiative that's not in your interest. It's exactly opposite in your interest. Make no mistake, the nation of sanctuary is the eradication of the Welsh people. The nation of sanctuary is the eradication of the Welsh people. It's coming from the top. And this is how it always works in socialist countries. It comes down from the top, and the people have really no democratic resource. Because at the end of the day, like maybe not in Wales in particular, but say the UK, for example, or say in America, who owns the army? Look at North Korea. Who owns the army? Private citizens have, weapons, able to form militias and, start rebelling against the government. Anyway, much like we did see throughout history. Hell, America have an entire holiday to celebrate it. That's why they value the Second Amendment so much, because when they were resisting what they deemed as a treasonous and tyrannical regime, namely the British, right? That they had guns and they had an ability to fight back against it. Soon after that, a couple of years after that, they declared independence. And look at that. They're now unequivocally the best and strongest country on the planet. And the funny thing is, I go on about this because they don't like that Donald Trump is the president at the moment. They'll say, oh, you'd say America's the best. I'm like, well, if you were living there, would you rather live anywhere else? And I'm like, why are there more people, especially when Biden was the president, for example, he just threw open the border. Why are there more people going into America from these other countries like Mexico and all these other countries rather than trying to leave it? Because it is the freest country on the planet. They call it the land of the free for a reason. They're not lying. And it's okay to admit this. It's okay to admit that there are things that we can learn from this. Such as maybe, which I'm hoping Restore Britain might have some say in the future, restoring some kind of Second Amendment for the countries, restoring some Second Amendment for the countries of these isles to resist future government tyranny. I'd hope so. But to do that, there's other things that we have to do. We have to become a morally just and upright society again before that can happen. You can't give atheists and Muslims and anywhere else aside from Christians really any unfettered access to guns and even really speech. Because look, you go away from God, in particular the Christian God, right? You go away from Jesus. And it's not too long after that you start getting into whole LGBTQ sexualizing children, normalizing pedophilia, killing your children, sacrificing them to Moloch, right? It's not too far before human nature naturally takes them down that path without the constraints and without the accountability of the Almighty. Okay, she's just sleeping. She keeps making noises and it's terrifying. So again, we have to do things as a people as well, ladies and gentlemen, to become more of a morally upright, virtuous, virtue-driven society before we can have anything like that. But ultimately, that's what's going to really stop any future tyrannical regimes from really taking hold in the future, such as not wasting £657,000 of taxpayer money on teaching school children about misinformation. So it should surprise you that Neagle again, like I said, the age of the female feminist liberal politician is coming to an end, ladies and gentlemen, with stuff like this. Provided an update on the £657,093 Democratic Engagement Grant, which funds sessions for school children on tackling misinformation. And some might call it brainwashing, because that's exactly what it is.
The Democratic Engagement Grant, we have spent allocated £657,093 to support democratic activities in Wales, which is a substantial amount of money. One of the four purposes, as she'll be aware, is to ensure that learners have opportunities to become ethical and informed citizens of Wales and the world who understand and exercise their democratic responsibilities and rights.
Yeah, democratic in the same way that North Korea is democratic.
As she's already highlighted, this is a mandatory part of the humanities area.
Socialism, ideas so good, you have to make them mandatory and you have to enforce them. You have to enforce them at the threat of sending people to prison.
Of learning and experience, and the statements of what matters are clear, that learners should be supported to learn about citizenship and active citizenship, about different forms of governance, and enabling learners to understand their roles and responsibilities in a democratic system. Now that 16 and 17-year-olds are eligible to vote in Wales, I agree with her that this is more important
important than ever. I would say that we are taking meaningful action in this space. We have the Democratic Engagement Grant, which is funding projects which are delivered in the classroom to support young people to participate in the democratic
I wish these people would get on with it
process.
sometimes.
That includes the digital dialogue sessions, which I know she's been part of and which I've been part of in my own constituency. It's also involved sessions on tackling misinformation and supporting the City of Cardiff's Democracy in Action workshop.
Over £500,000. And the NHS is on its knees when all of our public services are shit, when buses don't run on time, trains don't run on time, energy's stupidly expensive, recycling bins don't get taken, you know, businesses are being crushed. Businesses are being crushed, all of this stuff, right? The high street in my local, it pains me. It physically pains me when I see photos of how my town's high street used to look. Physically pains me when I see photos of how my town's high street used to look. It used to be bustling. You'd see photos, men, classy men, stiff upper lip attitude, wearing suits. You know, you'd have shops filled with stuff. And as a kid, we never understood the importance of things like this. Now we do. It's a classic saying, ladies and gentlemen, you never understand what you have till it's gone. You never understand what you have till it's gone. Now it's all fucking vape shops and Turkish barbers and kebab shops. And, you know, you got to wonder how many of these things are just a front for something else. You have to wonder that. But again, £657,000 of your money to brainwash your children. And that should be evident with what we talked about at the start of this episode, ladies and gentlemen. This is not education. This is brainwashing. This is brainwashing. Because some may say that, you know, the things that are being spread at the moment by the government and by these agencies are misinformation. Let me open this. So, you have this, for example, ladies and gentlemen, which was released in Germany. So this is from Germany. It's not from Wales. But Germany, many areas of Germany, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, suffer massively, especially in the cities. We covered it last time. A lady who was ranting and raving about problems with immigrants. But problems with immigrants, usually from societies where they don't have very positive views of women, very oppressive, very, for lack of a better term, misogynistic. And this was, I'm not exactly sure where this is from. It's from Buren, I believe is how you pronounce it. It's from Buren of Ostwestfalen-Lippe. I hope I pronounced that right. Talking about, you know, not groping people in water. I'm assuming it's in like a public pool or something like that. And let me know what you think would be the problem was, ladies and gentlemen, if you saw this poster as an awareness for not sexually assaulting people in pools. Who would you think the culprit is? So for those of you watching, for listening, not watching, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what the German says, obviously. But this is a poster. This is a poster. And it is of a, what you would assume a you know, middle-aged, I suppose, German lady with red hair, groping a young brown boy, what appears to be a teenage sort of brown boy. And you get the impression that it's a bunch of tiddly ants in Germany groping a bunch of immigrant boys. And it should surprise you none, ladies and gentlemen, when I show you this in a moment, who was responsible for things like this. Who was responsible for just everything wrong with this? It is a complete inversion of reality. And apparently who was behind this is a lady by the name of, I believe that's how you say it, with, I'm not going to describe her yet, but she's apparently behind this. It's apparently a tiki campaign, which shows a chubby German woman groping a migrant with a wooden leg. I forgot to mention that's a wooden leg. A complete inversion of reality. And it should surprise you none, ladies and gentlemen, the kind of person, allegedly, I have to say allegedly, obviously, But if the shoe fits, So again, for those of you listening, not watching, ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at a very obese lady, very like liberal lady, with I don't believe the photo is the most high def it could be, some kind of stereotypical nose piercing, bright green hair, green and stripy jumper. Honestly, look, it's low key looking like something out of bloody Beetlejuice with the jumper, not necessarily her herself, but the jumper. And it should surprise you none. Again, this is a parent. I don't want to cause her any, any hate or anything like that. You shouldn't go over there and spout a bunch of hate to this lady if you can find her or anything like that. I don't advise that whatsoever. But there's a pattern. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, the age of the liberal female politician is over. And this is why there's a rising case at the moment for people in America. They have the repeal the 19th, as kind of like as a pseudo joke at the moment. But, a lot of people are saying it. Even a lot of women, as they're realizing that with how emotional women tend to be, they're very much more emotionally driven than men for the most part, that they will be behind a lot of these initiatives that are directly putting them in danger. And even the other fellow women that are more conservative are noticing who the problem is. The problem, for example, with males competing in women's sports and the guys being men, is women that more voted for that than men. Because women, especially in the UK, are trending dangerously liberal, especially over the last 20 years. Dangerously liberal. And I got a graph to show you at the end that really cements that. But we're talking about misinformation. This is misinformation. This poster is misinformation. It's an insult to German women to say that they are the ones groping migrant boys, when in many ways, or the vast majority of cases, it is the exact opposite. It's German women being harassed by migrant men. And we've covered that time and time again on this podcast. We've given you example after example after example. The one lady, I believe it was either in Berlin or in Vienna, where they grabbed her, picked her up and said, let's take her to Raqqa, I believe it was. And Raqqa being the ISIS stronghold where they kept Yazidi sex slaves. But no, it's obviously the tiddly German ants that are the problem with touching young migrant boys on the arse. So is it misinformation to say that the problem is predominantly, males that are coming from these completely alien, backwards cultures? Would it be misinformation to point out, for example, a little while ago in March, that St. John Lloyd School in Wales, I believe they disabled their X page now after James S. has exposed them. This post has 270,000 views at time of recording, ladies and gentlemen. Ask students to complete a task in which they have to pretend that they are Syrians finding an illegal route into the United Kingdom. And they're rewarded for avoiding border crossings, and it is pure indoctrination. This is what I mean. You have to take a vested interest, ladies and gentlemen, in what your children are learning. You have to. You don't have a choice anymore. And I wish you did. But you don't anymore. So this is what we're referring to, ladies and gentlemen. I'll bring it up on screen for you now. So it says here, task 1. Getting into Europe is very difficult. You could go to Africa first if you're feeling adventurous. The thick black lines are where the border police or fences are. Try to avoid these. You have this map on your table and a blank A4 map. This is Europe. Use the atlas to plan your route to the UK. Syria is part of the southeast and is not part of Europe. So this is where you have a school in Wales that were actively getting children to avoid border crossings and plan their route to the UK from Syria as an illegal migrant, to indoctrinate them into thinking that this is normal, this is okay, and this is good. That's what you have with this, ladies and gentlemen. That is what passes for education in Wales. This is the result, this is the logical end result of the policies of people like Neagle, the education minister. Because everything they do and everything that they are doing is in the exact opposite interests of the people of Wales. And it has been for a long, long time. It has been for a long, long time. I'm going to give you a little bit extra detail on this, ladies and gentlemen, because there's another slide that I wanted to show you from this lesson, if you can call it that, from this struggle session. It says here, appreciate the huge distances that Syrian refugees travel to reach their destination. Appreciate your invaders. Teaching children to appreciate their invaders. Plan a possible route through Europe to the UK. Bronze. Plan a route from Syria to the UK using an atlas. All controlled borders are avoided and each country is accurately located. For silver, you do all of the above, but controlled borders are avoided and countries and cities are accurately located. There is some effort to work out the distance from place to place using the scale. So I would imagine this is some kind of geography lesson, I would imagine. Or again, might fit in under this, what is it? Not the RSE scheme, but like the PSE. This might be like a PSE lesson, you know, where for some reason they were teaching us about euthanasia and stuff like that, as if it was in any way okay. Plan a route, for gold, plan a route from Syria to the UK. Controlled borders are avoided using land and sea, and cities are accurately located. Distance from each location to the next is calculated using the scale, and then it cuts off. This is just pure indoctrination, ladies and gentlemen. It is pure indoctrination. And again, this is why your children are being taught to appreciate and plan their own invasion, to plan their subjugation. That's what they're being taught. It's not school. It's an indoctrination camp. But again, I might get done for misinformation for saying this, just as I might get done for bringing to light that a controversial charity, City of Sanctuary, has even produced a game called Asylum, Snakes and Ladders, in which case Square 51 is labelled Sent to Wales. Lucky, free language classes, and you get a ladder up to Square 55. Making use of benefits provided by the Welsh government off the back of the Welsh taxpayer, who's already taxed into oblivion enough as it is in a tyrannical socialist system, and then they're laughing at you. They're laughing at you with Asylum, Snakes and Ladders. Don't believe me, ladies and gentlemen, look on a screen right now. Don't believe me, look on a screen right now. Asylum, Snakes and Ladders. And you get a 71, Square 71, case failed due to solicitor negligence. And now you get sent back down even further, Square 50, but you get sent down for flashbacks. But yeah, you get a ladder up to Square 55 when you get sent to Wales. You get sent to Wales. It's a shame, because for the Welsh taxpayer at the moment, getting sent to Wales is akin to serfdom in many instances, akin to serfdom. So again, great if you're a foreign invader, not so great if you're a Welsh taxpayer. Couple more things to go through now, ladies and gentlemen. Just one of the things I want to bring to light. So again, what makes you think? One more thing, that the Welsh government is a foreign government. Work on behalf of foreign interests. The First Minister, again, should surprise you, is a female liberal politician. Eluned Morgan said we should never forget the Welsh government's proud record in Uganda, where they've helped to plant 25 million trees, at taxpayer expense, obviously. It makes you wonder, why is the NHS on its knees? Why are our roads shit? Why are our taxes higher than ever? Why are we not getting the benefits from said taxes? Why are many instances either the recycling vans aren't sent out or our rubbish collections now have to be reduced to, I think it's once a month in some areas? Why everything is stupidly expensive. Energy is expensive. You have to have pretty much both parents working if you want to raise even just one child. But, families of immigrants coming over with 4, 5, 6 children get everything funded at taxpayer expense. That you are being made into a slave class. And then on top of that, they laugh at you when they spend 25, however much it is, to plant 25 million trees in Uganda. I think Eluned Morgan is a Ugandan representative in disguise.
Well, we should never forget the proud record we have in Uganda, where we've helped to plant 25 million trees. Well, we should never...
It's a shame for all the people that are struggling with hospital appointments, struggling to get a GP or dentist appointment, you know, struggling to even put food on the table. Oh, but at least the Ugandans have got trees. At least the Ugandans have got trees. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, there's one thing that I wanted to bring to your attention that I think is possibly the most important graph you'll see at the moment. So we're noticing now that as the world has become more egalitarian, that ideology gaps are opening up between men and women. And this is exactly what Jordan Peterson tried to convey when all the feminist journalists and everybody like that were trying to attack him and call him misogynistic and stuff like that, which when you try to force equivocation, you know, when you try to force egalitarianism, you end up magnifying the differences between men and women. Because feminism made the assumption that men and women are just completely interchangeable, that there's no inherent differences between them. And what you find is that when you make society more egalitarian, and when you try to do all this stuff, right, that the liberal intelligentsia has been trying to do, and you actually magnify the differences between men and women. That's what you actually do. The differences between men and women, as societies become more egalitarian, has become more pronounced. We have 4 graphs here, ladies and gentlemen, one from South Korea, one from the USA, one from Germany, and one from the UK. And it says here, a wide ideology gap is opening up between young men and women in countries across the world. This is political ideology of 18 to 29-year-olds. And what you're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, on this graph, red is women, blue is men. And if you go up from 0, that's people trending more liberal. And if you go down into the negatives from 0, it's people trending more conservative. Okay? Now, just have a look at these graphs, and I want you to think about what you see first off. So for those of you listening, not watching, ladies and gentlemen, you have South Korea, for example, where women are massively trending more liberal, plus 30 points, plus 30%. You have men massively trending more conservative, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. So women have been consistently more going up. Men initially from 2005 to 2015 were trending more liberal as well. And then you have a steep decline with men in particular, young men turning more conservative. You see the similar thing in the US where women in recent years have skyrocketed up in their liberalism. And men now are slowly starting to trend down more towards the conservative end. In Germany, you now have a slight tipping point just below the point where more men are trending conservative, and you again have this very sharp increase of women in particular turning more liberal. And it basically highlights what every conservative and what every Christian commentator was saying for the last 5 years or more, 10 years or more. From 2010 to 2020, I think it's 2010 to 2020. Yeah, here we go. From 1990, they were pretty much equal, more liberal than conservative. But for a while, women and men throughout the early 2010s, throughout the early 2000s up to 2010, were trending more liberal, but only slightly. I'm going to bring this up on the screen for you big time again, ladies and gentlemen, so you can really see it. On the right-hand side here, you'll see at 2010, something happened, some massive retard disease happened, and women shot up massively, and have remained higher than even the US, gone up 50% in terms of their liberalism. The really stark point, however, that we're in a really bad position is that the men have not yet made the turn conservative. In particular, we've yet to have the part where, and I believe this is where we're trending now, we're going to start making our way down that way in any way. The good hard times create strong men, and strong men create good times. Because the times have been ruined. Times of recent have been ruined. You need to look outside to see that with the dystopia that we've allowed ourselves to get into. But the reason it's particularly bad in the UK at the moment is because even the men, and the young men in particular, have turned more liberal. Turned away from God, for example, turned away from principles, engaged in the, womanizing, OnlyFans, pornographic culture that has spread like a disease across these isles. It's because men in particular, because say what you want, men are the enforcement arm of society. Men are the enforcement arm of society. If men wanted to, they could rise up tomorrow and fulfill some women's subconscious fantasies of The Handmaid's Tale. If they wanted to, they could do it. Or we could do it. Speaking as one. If 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, outside of very, contrived circumstances, if you have a man and woman in a fight, the man will win. Purely based on strength, purely based on bone density, reaction time, all of this stuff. Men are the enforcement arm of society. That's why, for example, typically, at least until recently, you'd have pretty much all male police officers. You'd have all males in the army. Because men are better at those things, on average. You get outliers for sure. That's why, for example, you have such a massive difference between male and female athletes. Now, don't get me wrong, if you take, the elite of a female sprinter and put her up against somebody that's never run in their life on a male, yeah, she might win. She might win. But even, for example, Serena Williams, for example, said, if I played Andy Murray, I'd lose, what was it? I said he'd smoke me 6-0, 6-0, 6-0 every single time. Because men and women are not the same. So men are the enforcement arm of society. They're the ones that defend the castle. And they're a political animal. We're political animals as humans. Now, when the men decide that they're going to abandon those principles, that they're not going to be virtuous, that they're not going to respect the Almighty, for example, that they're not going to do good things, that they're not going to be upright and moral and adhere to the moral code, and set the standard, then you have a society that is really primed to collapse. And that's why our society in particular in the UK has fallen so far. Because, I'm going to bring it up on screen one more time for you. This upward trend in liberalism, particularly with men. And I think you are going to be seeing things shift. With how much we've seen, for example, how things can change with a strong leader, with a strong man in the White House, for example, in the US, you are going to see things changing. You are going to see things changing in the very near future. But this one graph with the UK pretty much encapsulates all of our problems right now. So for a young man listening to this, like me, I support you take these words to heart. I support you take this to heart. And you may not like what I'm saying to you. It may offend you. It may make you realize that you have to stop doing certain things. I wouldn't be saying it to you if I hadn't made that realization myself and weren't trying and doing my best to make that sacrifice myself as well. I say this as one of you. I say this as one of you. We need to do better. We need to do better. And for some of you, that's going to mean swallowing your pride and getting back in the pew of a church. And realizing that Christ is Lord. Even if you may not want to admit it. But hey, that'll do it for today. There's something our society depends on. Gentlemen, speaking more specifically to you, there's something our society depends on. Let's be good men. Let's give our future generations something really to look up to. And role models to be like. We have our role model for what we need to be like. We have our role model of strength that can never be matched. With the man who bore the weight of the world on his shoulders. You know, the man who gave his life for you and me. And everyone. That's what he was thinking of. When physically he was at his lowest, when... Well, you only need to look at the intro splash to the podcast. Is that those images, those videos are there for a reason. When he'd been scourged, when he'd been mauled, when he'd been spat on, and he'd been, you know, when people who he had nothing but love for hated him so much they inflicted the worst pain imaginable and worst death on him. And not only did he show us the way to be in life, he showed us by following him we have no reason to fear death. Maybe you ought to think about that a lot more. Truly think about it a lot more. And realize what he did for you. For all of us. And on that note, we'll leave this episode there, guys. Thank you very much as always. Have a fantastic morning, afternoon, even night, wherever you are. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for watching. Obviously, please, if you found this episode useful, guys, please share it. Obviously, very, very small. Trying to provide that little bit of value. And obviously, bringing light to these issues that are very, very important. Sadly, it seems that many people still don't realize the perilous danger that we're in. So please share it if you find it useful. And Hwyl fawr, have an amazing day. And I'll catch up with you next time. Godspeed.